Conversations with Irma. This is your place, this is your platform, and this is where we get to discuss some ideas that really matter to us. So if it matters to you, I want us to talk about it. And today is another exciting episode because I got someone, I'm not even exaggerating, like you are going to listen to him. For me, I needed to ask myself, do I qualify or like, what do I do? But anyway, I'm so grateful because I'm very honored to receive Isaac here in studio. You don't know Isaac, you're gonna know. And probably you know him already, but he's such a private guy. He doesn't talk about his work, but rather his work is talking. So I got to know him, to discover him through his amazing projects. And I was like, okay, the next time you are here in Rwanda, I really wanna talk to you. So I am so happy to have Isaac. Welcome, Isaac.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for that generous introduction.
Am I lying? It is so true, Isaac. I mean, we're so, like, at least the people who know you, they're like, how does he do this?
Because he talks really fast and he doesn't sleep. That's how he does it.
So it's such an amazing opportunity for us, Rwandans, to have you here. And you've been doing a lot of things, but specifically, I really want to talk about 36 million solutions, because that's where I discovered you. So tell us, what was it and how are you scaling the impact to this day?
No, thank you. Look, I think I have to say that I should be the one who's lucky to be working in Rwanda. I think I've been coming to this country for the last 10 odd years, 10, 12 years. And the level of generosity and hospitality and willingness to engage and sometimes, work with my crazy ideas or, what have you, I think has been a blessing. I think I can't think of many African countries where I'd be so lucky to be able to be welcomed and work so easily with the people who are here. So I'm grateful. I'm very grateful to work in this country. But in 36 Million Solutions, it's an initiative that started out. We had an event here in Rwanda, November 2021. Was the first time that Africa private sector had convened an event with humanitarian organizations like the UNHCR, the government of Rwanda, and some development partners to come together and say, how do we embolden or enable the Africa private sector to advocate for refugees, right? And the reason is this, all of us grew up affected by refugees in some ways. I grew up in Ghana, like I said. I grew up where we had, at some point, Ethiopian refugees staying with us.
Yeah.
And you went to school and the friends you had who came from conflict areas. And the interesting thing is that half the time, you don't think much of it. You don't realize how much those brothers and sisters that you're in school with, how much you have to go through to come sit next to you. Because you take your life for granted. You are there, you live in Accra, whatever, but you don't know the person from Ethiopia. I mean, how do you get from Addis or someone in Ethiopia to end up in Ghana as a refugee? And so as I got older, again, I didn't think anything of it, but coincidentally, 2018, we started looking at this work around around refugees. And what struck me was the fact that a lot of African companies were not in this conversation. And I'm asking myself, but why is that? We as Africans talk about how Africa is changing, African narrative, and Africa for Africans. Now, refugees, this is our problem, right? I mean, refugee is a human-made problem.
Yeah.
Conflict, drought, we created this mess. And then we disperse our brothers and sisters to go live in other places, so we don't take care of them. We expect someone else to take care of them. Now, we like the help and we appreciate the support of international partners. Yeah. But what about us and our companies? So that was the motivation. And we're able to, the government of Rwanda was gracious enough to host us.
Yes.
And then we were able to bring some partners together to advocate and say, okay, what can we do together as private sector to make sure that we're elevating and amplifying the refugee voices in mainly 3 areas: livelihoods, how do we get refugees jobs? How do we get refugees education? And how do we advocate for better environments for them? The right to work, the right to work without harassment, these kinds of things. And how do you do that in an effective manner? So that's what that was about. And like all things, it was a crazy idea in the beginning, and it got done. And so we're grateful that we're able to do it.
Yeah, it's really something so inspiring, especially when you are trying to touch, a subject, or when you're trying to bring a solution to a big problem or something that a lot of people don't necessarily think about. But as you say, this is for Africans. Like, this is our problem. We need to figure out something, to make it work. So my question is, how do you scale the impact? How do you evaluate? Like, we're doing this in this country. Do you go from country to country? How do you do it?
Yeah, good question. Look, it was great to come here in November, December and have a nice event, and Sarkodie performed and Tuba was here.
Yeah.
But then that's when the work starts, right? So that was sort of, but how do you scale? You scale one at a time. So we have some specific goals in mind, right? So for us, one of our measurements of scaling is, or the event itself, a bunch of companies make pledges. So, for instance, one person pledged to set up a refugee fund towards refugees investments. Somebody else pledged to have to give about $1 million in procurement, so refugee businesses can go through a procurement process with this company and they can professional treatment. Another company decided that they were going to help us with healthcare. They're going to give free healthcare to refugees. Another one also promised to work in the area of the creative arts, whether it's in sports or entertainment. Now, it's easy to pledge. It's harder to actually do the work.
Exactly.
So our first point of scaling is for those people who made those pledges, hold them accountable.
Yeah.
Because we also hold each other accountable as Africans, right? So many times we're very good at doing the talking, and sometimes we need to do the work. So over the last 8 months, a lot of our work has been around how do we make sure that these pledges were made actually go to fruition. That's the first. The second thing around scaling is also geographic scale, right? So we started in Kenya, we do work in Kenya, Uganda, a few other places. So now our question is, well, we need to scale beyond those countries, and especially in the areas we focus on, which is again, education, livelihoods, and advocacy. So in education, one of the projects we have right now is we're trying to figure out how to set up a fund that actually will allow a number of refugees to go to university every single year.
Yeah.
Because I believe that you have to train the leadership of a country.
Yes.
And it's very difficult if you have young refugees who are university qualified who don't get to go to school through no fault of their own. And the private sector is helping us with that. We're also currently working on a refugee fellowship program. And the reason for that is that I believe that you have to get men and women who are like-minded, who are exceptional, to be in a space where they can excel, right? So we're going to create this fellowship program. We're going to incubate them. We're going to make sure that, and the idea is to do, I think, 150 or so in the next 5 years. So not too big, but be very focused on these things, right? Make sure that they can chew what's in your mouth, right? Make sure that whatever you promise, you can deliver on.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. We're also doing partnerships. Actually, in Rwanda, we're partnered with Inkomoko for the work they do with refugees to make sure that we learning some of the market linkages and market systems they're creating around the ecosystem, and next expand across Africa, be their partner in advocacy, but also in best practices, in research. We need data, right? And finally, link refugees to businesses, not as a by the way, but as an integral part of the business process, or as as what they do together. So I think those are the kinds of things that we're looking to do to scale. But for me, first things first. If you pledge something in November, December, I need you to deliver today.
Yes.
Because then that becomes the next step of how we scale for the next level, and the next level, and the next level. And then the work will show for itself. If you do good work, the work will show for itself.
Definitely, definitely, yeah. And so as you're speaking, I'm thinking about, this huge project that you're doing, and how you're explaining to me, like, this is how we're going to scale it. This is, how we're going to make people accountable, like make sure that whatever they promised, whatever they pledged for, they're going to do it. And also I'm thinking, okay, so that's already something huge for refugees. And I know you love to say that you are telling African stories, and that's one side of African stories, the refugees. And I want to know, is there any other cause, you are pushing, today? So
look, I think there's nothing called huge when it comes to Africa, because Irma, our problems are so profound and so unique. We do need big ideas to solve them, right? And so I think the things that I do, I don't see them as huge. It's something that we have to do, right? I mean, because if we don't do it, who is going to do it?
Who's going to do it?
Who is going to do it? And so I find myself a lot of times like getting caught up in projects that guys are like, but what are you doing? Refugees? And I was like, yeah, but we have to solve for this, right? So what else am I doing? So I'm doing refugee work, obviously said that. I also have a for-profit hat. I run a company called Both Emerging Markets Group. We have an office in Dubai, an office in Nairobi, and we work in a couple of spaces. I care very much about Africa stories, how Africa is represented in the geopolitical space of the world. So as African countries, how do we show up in these conversations? How do we show up at the table, right? Are we showing up at the big boys table, or are we showing up in the back room? And so a lot of what we do is sort of think through ideas around, gosh, how do you get our countries to be at the big boys and girls table? Also around that is we look at how do you reframe relationships, right? A lot of African countries have very traditional partnerships with, traditional partners like the US and But there are over 200 countries in this world. And so part of what we spend our time doing is, gosh, can we find a way to develop a relationship between Slovenia and an African country, Estonia, some of this, Brazil, some of these countries that are not necessarily the US and UK, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, right? I mean, the UAE, Saudi, the Gulf, have been our partners in terms of culture and geography for a very long time, right? If you look at the issues, if you look at Oman and Zanzibar, the UAE and Africa, we share the Red Sea, But yet we're just now doing a lot of work with the Gulf, with Saudi Arabia, with UAE and everything else. We go to Dubai to shop.
Yeah.
But do we engage the UAE in a strategic manner? Do we, our governments engage? So these are the kinds of things that we spend our time thinking about at both. We also spend time working with entrepreneurs, where instead of having what I call a blanket approach, we pick specific entrepreneurs that we can work with to scale, not just with money, but also time, right? I say that African founders have so much work to do because African founders are usually so busy raising money. Someone needs to help them run the business. And so a lot of time, we spend a lot of time trying to help our companies work with saying, okay, how do you go to market? How do you do strategy? How do you do operations? And we help them with that. And then finally, we also work with companies that are looking to come into the African continent, but come in the right way. So it's a win-win, right? Yeah. And so how do you structure those investments? How do you structure those partnerships? How do you pick the right country and the right fit for the industry they want to be in? And then finally, we also work with humanitarian organizations in helping engage them in private sector activations, which is why I ended up in Mahoro in the first place. We're working with UNHCR on refugees, and I said to myself, yeah, but we need more Africans to do this. We're going to do something about it. So that's sort of, and then within that, I've done some work on China. I'm a big China, Africa is a very big interest of mine. But actually more China, Africa, more the trilateral relationship between Africa and countries around us, whether it's China or India or some of these other countries, and how do you forge relationships. Those are the things that I spend time thinking about. Wow. And other things, but yeah.
And how do you get to bring those ideas of yours, to bring them to pass if you don't have, let's say you don't have any government support?
So I tell people that, and it's a bit of a joke, but I tell people that what works for me is I'm not a very smart guy. And this is what I mean by that, right? So people who are very smart, right? They overthink.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have an idea and they want to think about the idea and they want to move the idea 15 times over and see. Me, if you tell me right now that, Isaac, it's important for us to save 3-legged dogs, I'd be like, let's go. Right? Okay. I'm not gonna think about what if the dog bites me, what if the dog, is there a problem? Let's solve it. Mm-hmm. And along the way, what I've learned in life is along the way, you're gonna find partners. You can't do everything by yourself.
Yes.
Right? I'm not one of these people who believes that I need to build my legacy. I have no desire to build my legacy. None, zero. What I care about is being part of ecosystems, organizations that build these things, right? Ecosystem plays. That for me is much more interesting. So does Isaac want to be the person who invented? No, I don't. What I do care about is that we solve problems together. So a lot of times, idea comes to my head, or someone has an idea. We go in together. I'll find partners who can help us do it, or I identify friends who I'm like, hey, I'm doing this, will you support me? And then we go. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Mm-hmm. But you know what? It doesn't matter. You got to try. There are many things you've tried that are just like, this one wasn't a very good one. Yeah. Right? And then, but if you hear someone else doing it, you support them, right? And I think we ought to, as Africans, and this sounds sort of kumbaya, as Africans, we ought to do better at supporting each other.
Yeah, I really want you to emphasize on that.
So much.
Yeah.
We do, because, we have this mentality sometimes that like, we're always hedging, we're always scared. Yeah, but what if they put us under bars? What if they disappoint us? What if they lie to us? So what? Someone will. But it doesn't mean that because someone did something bad to you 2 years ago, you cut everyone else off, right? We ought to show up for each other because we are all we got. No one's going to come save us. This is it. Like, if you look at other,
us. That is true.
I'll give an example. When this Ukraine-Russia conflict happened, look at how quick Europe was ready to help the Ukrainians. Look at how they jumped. Countries were lifting visas and they were granting whatever. And When there's conflict in Africa, how many people jump in? When Rwanda jumped in to help, Africans were like, but why are they helping? I'm like, what do you mean why are they helping? Yeah. They're helping.
Why are they
what's
helping?
What's the problem?
Like, what's
people
the
were
benefit?
Skeptic, what's the benefits? I'm like, they're helping. Every time someone tries to help, people have this skeptical, there's no angle. A government said, I see people in Libya struggling, we're going to bring them to Rwanda to help them out. What's the issue with that? A government said, this processing thing isn't happening well in the UK, we're going to bring them to Rwanda to process. They're helping. And I think we need to do better at showing up for each other. And I think for me, at a micro level, because I'm not a government, I believe in that ethos, right? If there's a problem to be solved, do something about it, or get out of the way and let someone solve it. But that complaining thing,
yeah, please, we have to stop.
It's too much work. It's too much work. It's too much work.
Yeah, and but we are trying to solve problems, right? But we have unique problems, and one of those issues or problems are actually on a personal level. Earlier we were talking about how, to talk, to express ourselves, it's still an issue, especially I was, speaking for myself, my culture, we are very reserved, we don't want to share, we don't want to talk. And then you say it's actually an African thing. So there is this thing of also being skeptical, like not trusting each other because of, based on the history or that. So I'm like, how do you overcome that? We have so many fears, and it's like many layers. It's not just one wound, it's many wounds, from generation to generations. So I'm like, you as Isaac, you come to us and you tell us all these solutions, like we're like inspired. We're like, okay, I want to start thinking of, of problems surrounding me. Where can I be useful? What can I do? But at the same time, myself, I'm damaged. So what do you say about that?
We're all damaged in different ways, one or the other, right? And I think, first of all, we need to not take ourselves too seriously when it comes to certain things. You're right, we've been damaged, we've been scarred. But if we're being honest, are we the only people in the world who've been damaged and scarred?
Not really. It's a human thing.
It's a human thing.
Yeah.
Right? Atrocities have happened all over the world, from Latin America to South America to whatever, to Asia to whatever. I'm not comparing which one is good, which one is bad, which one is worse, which one. All I'm saying is that within the construct of human existence, bad things happen and good things happen. I think sometimes there's this tendency to focus on the bad things. I'll give you, a lot of Africans are religious. Let me give you a religious example. I often say that Africans give the devil too much credit because we spend so much time on what's bad. And like, yeah, but there's also good.
Yeah.
And for me, for whatever reason, I don't know how, I prefer to spend my energy on what's good because it's light.
Yeah.
And so I think that if we're able to raise a consciousness to say, yeah, I know the lights are out. Yeah, I know the potholes are there. But you know what? There's a positive thing here. There's an opportunity for me to do something. I think it makes it a bit easier. Now, having said that, I also want to acknowledge that there's trauma in the continent. There's a lot of trauma. And I think that what we were talking about earlier about speaking, even leadership, right? Yeah. This among African men, this machoism and the way we treat people, like we treat women, the way we lead. I mean, vulnerability issues, that's all real. But I'm not convinced it's uniquely African. I think the problem is that we've decided that it's ours. We want to own that burden. Yeah. But we don't have to own that burden. Nobody put it on us. I mean, yes, it's there, but nobody's begging you to own it. You can take it off. And you can learn to take it off, right? You can learn to take it off by conversations. You can learn to take it off by, I have accountability partners. There are 2 or 3 men that I speak to almost every other day, every other week about things that are going on. And it's something as minute as, gosh, I'm struggling with this, to gosh, I just want to cry, right? I have a son, I have a 14-year-old who I dropped him off last week to go play football in Europe. And I told my friend, a guy friend, see you, I said to him, guy, I said, I left the kid and I stopped and cried for 20 minutes. I couldn't help crying. Wow. Because I was hurting, right? And I think it's okay for us to be vulnerable. It's okay to talk about these things. And I think that generationally, our parents have their trauma, we have our trauma. We just need to learn that we don't transfer that trauma onto our kids. Yes. That's the first thing, right? Because some of those battles were not our battles. We need to respect it. We need to honor it. We need to understand that we stand on the shoulders of giants. But we need our own narrative. Yes. And don't own someone else's trauma to be yours because it's not your journey. Yeah. Right? And I think if we can learn to get there together, if we can learn to talk to each other, more people say that men don't talk. And I say women don't talk either. Women talk, but they're talking about superficial stuff sometimes. Yeah. Men don't talk, we bottle everything in, generally speaking. But men do talk. Yeah. And I think we need to learn to talk more. And I think if we do that from that point of view of our personal relationships, I think it'll also help us ease things. For instance, last point around this, because we don't talk much. If I go to my colleague and I say to my colleague, hey, I hear there's an opportunity to do this investment in blah, blah. Most of the times, he will say nothing about it, he'll be quiet, because we don't share. And I'm asking and guys are like, but Isaac, you share so much. I say, what is wrong with sharing? What is the problem?
Everyone they want to keep their ideas and the information. Like it's such a big problem. Like for somebody to tell you something and they know it's gonna be a blessing to you, but they just want to keep it to themselves. And sometimes they don't even qualify for that.
Thank you. And I ask myself, that information you have, that contact you have, it's perishable. If you're not going to do anything with it, why aren't you sharing it? Because it's a blessing, and because this is what you pay for it. Huh? The more you do good, the more good comes to you.
That's it. Like what you give, you get.
It's what you get back, and it's true. It's very true.
Wow, that's profound, and I think it's real, it's raw. Like at some point, we have to take responsibility. We can't just stay there crying. Yes, we have those moments of crying, but we have to engage in this type of conversations. Like, hey, somebody told me one day that some people don't want to heal. It's like, what? Who doesn't want to heal? Some people, they just want to keep their pain because, they can get more attention with their pain. It's like, I've never thought of that before. So we don't want to be caught into that group as Africans. And I think what you're saying is embracing ourselves and not, like, don't die by yourself.
Yep.
Talk to other people.
Yep.
Like, be real. If you are struggling, share with somebody.
And you know, I think one of the things that I think is, again, I don't know whether this is true or not, but I feel like in a traditional African society, we were not like this. I feel like something changed, right? So if you think of this through the eyes of, say, the missionaries as a conversation, right? This Protestant idea of suffering and sacrifice and, you know, pain. It's like you have to go through pain to be successful. Like we want to go through pain so someday we can be rewarded. And I was saying to myself, but why? No one has time for that. Why would I want to suffer? Nobody wants to suffer. So, and I think somehow we've clouded that because you have so many unique problems. We've somehow enshrined that idea that pain is good. I mean, think of when you're in school in Africa, right? I mean, I went to school in Ghana. Somehow teachers were happy when you got 40%, or 30%.
Wow.
And I'm like, why?
Why?
Don't you want us to get 95%? And the teacher will be happy because somehow the exam was so hard, you got 30%. And I'm like, but that's something is wrong with that. Your job as an educator is to get me to 100%. And I think it's this thing of like, Irma struggled when she got the highest and she got 60. And the guy is happy. The guy should be sad.
What is that? What is that? Right? Help me understand. Right? What is that?
But I think it's this thing, this Puritan Protestant thing of like, I need to make you suffer to feel like you earned it. Why do you have to suffer to earn it?
You have to carry your cross.
You have to carry your cross and your back is burnt. Why? I put in the work. I showed up. I did the work. I did the exam. Give me what to do. And I think sometimes when people say they want to heal, I don't know. I think in somehow we not the delight's wrong. We get stuck in this vacuum, this thing, where we can't get out. And it's so difficult to get out because it's hard, It's hard. It's hard to wake up in the morning when things are tough and to keep grinding. And the hustle is not there to keep grinding. And yes, some of us have been privileged. Some of us have been privileged to travel, to do whatever. And so the pains are different, but nonetheless, the pain is there for everybody. The question is what you do with it. I think is what matters.
Wow. What do you do with your pain? So I think that's a profound question that we need to think about. So those who just joined us, welcome on Conversations with Irma. Here with Isaac, he is really dropping some wisdom. So please tune in. So Isaac, I want to know, like, with everything you're building, and I know you started a long time ago. I was so surprised when you told me that your first time in Rwanda was in 2012?
Around that time, around 2012.
Like,
2012.
Okay, so you've really been in this work. I'm pretty sure there's some keys that has been helping you, to really make it. Like, we never say that we're successful, we have arrived, but there's some, so many things to appreciate and to really celebrate in your life in terms of your career and everything, the work that you're doing. So share with us. I know a lot of people are watching us, especially young people. They need to know, okay, how can I make it? How can I stay grounded? How can I pursue my vision? So share with us, some few keys that have been really helping.
I don't know that I've arrived or what arriving looks like. I think that we all are on a journey. And at some point, I'll drop off the journey and others will continue it. But I'll tell you this. You mentioned how I come to Rwanda. I first, when I was in university, so the genocide happened. I remember reading the book, the Canadian peacekeeping guy wrote. And I think it's called Shaking Hands with the Devil or something. I read the book when I was like 19 or 20 in like 95, 96. But then, weirdly enough, I was in Sudan. And I was traveling back to Nairobi, living in Nairobi. And I sat next to someone who's still a very close friend of mine from Rwanda. And she had been in Sudan doing some work for the government or whatever, for a company here in Rwanda. And so she was telling me about Rwanda. She said, come visit. And again, I told you, I don't overthink things. So I okay, sure, I'll come visit. And so that was it. It was very, come visit. So I came, I met her. A few months later, I came to Rwanda. It was April. It was around the commemoration of a genocide, right? I came here. And ever since then, I've had this very interesting relationship with this country. So if you're asking me lessons, the lesson for me personally is what I've learned here. I keep coming back here because this place has motivated me to beyond just thinking beyond myself, like thinking big. When I started coming to Rwanda, I tell people this all the time when I talk to investors. Rwanda Air, it had maybe 1 or 2 planes, maybe at best. I think they had like 1 or 2 planes. They were like leasing to the Africa Union, something. Rwanda today is a legit airline with a lot of planes flying to a bunch of, I think, 20 odd destinations. I forgot how many destinations they go to, right? And that idea of having the vision to think bigger than your circumstance lives with me. I remember coming to Rwanda and hearing people talk about, you know, want to make Rwanda a mice whatever of Africa, where people come to events and conferences. I brought an event here. I brought the Africa Leadership Network event conference here, I think 2015, I forget, around the time. And Rwanda was picking up the events. Today, Rwanda, Cape Town, and Mauritius are the 3 top places in Africa. And most times, events are held in Rwanda. You had Chogam here, you had Ball here, everything is here.
Yes.
And I think that for me, as an African, when I look at the continent and look at, and even another quick good example around this is around visas, right? We're always complaining about visas on the African continent and the fact that, you know, Africans have to pay more on visas, whatever. I remember when when His Excellency Paul Kagame decided to, you know, make it easier for Africans to come to Rwanda.
Yeah.
You don't need visas. Look what it's done to this country. The diversity, the plurality of all these Africans in this place. Before that was maybe Nairobi that had that many Africans, maybe Johannesburg. Today, Rwanda, Kigali, a small city compared to Nairobi or Johannesburg, is in the league as one of the most diverse cities in Africa where people just come to hang out and to chill and to work. That's powerful.
It is.
Now, how can that not motivate you?
Wow.
How can that not tell you what is possible? Right? In a country where less than 30 years ago or so, one of the worst atrocities happened. But in spite of that, people still rise. In spite of that, leadership still works. There are many countries I know, that we all know, maybe not many, a few countries you all know, who've been through a fraction of what Rwanda went through. And they're not the same level. I don't know why, but what I do know is that here, for whatever reason, that idea of having great ideas and thinking big beyond yourself, no matter how small you are, is an African spirit.
Yes.
And for me, as Isaac, as an African boy, that for me is what the new Pan-African spirit looks like. Where Pan-Africanism is where Africans are thinking beyond themselves and thinking in a way that is holistically bigger. Who would have thought you'd be hosting the ball in a place like Kigali? Who would have thought Chogam will come here? Who would have thought you're hosting refugees from all over the world when you have your own struggles and trying to get out of stuff? Who would have thought you create the space for other people to come here?
Wow.
But this government is doing it. No government is perfect. No one is people are not perfect. But you keep pushing, and if you don't learn from that as an African, and you don't learn in your own corner to push beyond yourself, then I don't know what you're doing.
That's powerful.
No, but it's true. I mean, jokes, it's true, right? I mean, there's an adage. The late Madeleine Albright, who was the Secretary of State of the U.S., said one time that there's a special hell for women who don't support women. I think something like that.
Yeah.
I believe there's a special someplace for Africans who don't build Africa. Because your children are going to live in this place.
Exactly.
You can go hide in London, you can go hide in New York, but ultimately, you come back to Accra, you come back to Nairobi, you come back to Dar es Salaam, you come back to Kigali. And what you do there makes a difference. The way they view you is based on how you view yourself. And if you don't change the way they view you, whoever they are, how do you expect them to respect you? And this is not gimmicks, this is true. How many black people will go overseas and we look down upon?
It's sad.
And if you don't change the narrative of who you are and your place where you're from, and how proud you are to be from this place, and build together, how do you expect them to respect you?
Exactly.
And that's on the youth. That's on us. That's on us. That's on everybody.
Wow.
So, like I said, I don't know that I've arrived anywhere, but these are the lessons I take with me. These are the things that motivate me every single day to keep doing what I'm doing. And along the way, if there's some successes, so be it. If there's some failures, we take it on the chin. We keep moving.
And how do you deal with failures or some things that didn't go right? You know.
You roll with it. What are you going to do? It happens. You can't go under the rock because something didn't work. You learn and you move on. I tell my team, you learn, you pout, you sleep, next day you get up and do it again.
Wow.
What are you going to do?
But it sounds easy, but it's not that
but
easy.
It's true, right? I mean, look, if you allow failures to, again, there are complex issues on failure, it's psychologically complex, I get it. But on a day-to-day failure, if you allow that thing to consume you, you will die. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
That is so true.
You wake up in the morning and you're going to the bank and your car is stuck in traffic and power doesn't work and the driver doesn't come on time. And there's so many issues, but you can't. You have to raise profit.
You really have to find a way.
Yeah.
Like,
and the matatu is not coming on time. Then it's just too much work. But you have to. In spite of all that, you still have to rise, right?
You still have to rise.
And like I say to people, if some kid in India can do it, Some kid in Sri Lanka can do it. Some kid in Buenos Aires can do it. Some kid in favela in Brazil can do it. What the hell can't we do it? We have 2 legs, we have 2 heads, we have one brain like them. We have the same brain. Put it to use.
Put it to use.
Yeah, that's it.
This is it. This is it.
That's it.
Wow. So there is a question that I love to ask all my guests. So I love to tell them, like, okay, so consider this as a platform and consider the entire world listening to you. What will be the message to the world? Just one message.
Don't let anyone tell you what you can do.
Wow.
Because you don't even know what you can do. You don't know what you're capable of. So don't let anyone limit you on what you can do. If you vision it, if you dream it, just try it. Because really, the only way to know what your potential is and how far you can move in life or what you've been gifted with by the Almighty or whatever, you got to explore it. You know, we live in a world where no matter what you believe, energy, God, Allah, whatever your poison is, all of us at least believe one fundamental thing, that we're here and at some point you're going to leave. That's guaranteed. What you do in between is really up to you. And so you can live a linear life or being limited by others telling you what you can and can't do. You can live a life where you care what others think about you more than you care about what you believe yourself. Or you can, pardon my friend, say fudge it and do you. But do you honorably, respectfully, and with some empathy for others. That's it. And at the end of it, the light goes out and it's over.
Wow, thank you for that. Before I let you go, tell us a little bit of what you're doing here and what should we expect in the months to come.
Yeah, so I was here for Nkomoko's 10th anniversary. We had a wonderful party yesterday. First Lady was there. Everyone was dancing. It was fantastic. Adamahoro Coalition, the refugee organization in Iran, we're going to be doing quite a bit with Nkomoko with refugee advocacy. We're also currently working with Youth Connect. A few of us want to find ways to infuse the youth with sort of creative events around music and culture and things of the nature. So we're working on something to see whether we can deliver an amazing event around Youth Connect and build from there. You know, the vision is that over time, can we have Kigali become the hub of some creative experience, you know, where not just a creative experience, but then it's mission-centered. So we advocate for things we care about, advocates for cancer, for refugees, what have you, but within the context of an African celebration, and then see where that goes. So those are the things I'm working on right now that I've been here the last 2 days doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Isaac, for your time.
You're
This
welcome.
was really an inspiring conversation, and I hope we can have more of this. And that's why this platform is here, to have people like you who can share ideas, you know, because this is all to add value to people's lives, and you just done that. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
My people, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you learned. So for me, I was like, okay, should I grab my pen and my notebook and take some notes? But I'm glad I can watch and rewatch and rewatch this. So thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next episode on Conversations with Irma. Bye.